You're listening to Hashtag Impact, a podcast about stuff that matters, where we speak with inspiring change makers that make the world a better place. Today, I would love to ask you for a favor, if that's all right. If you enjoy listening to Hashtag Impact podcast, could you please tell one of your friends about it? No matter on which platform you are listening, there will be a share button. And you can just click that, share that link with one of your friends. And I would appreciate it so much if you could do that. It will make a massive impact. And why that is, you will hear in today's episode. There's so much I learned from the guest we feature today when it comes to communications, when it comes to branding, and also when it comes to how making an impact is really possible. There's so many tips in here for you today that will make an even bigger impact with your branding efforts too. So enjoy. Welcome so much to another wonderful recording at Hashtag Impact Club with an incredible guest. I'm so thrilled for all of you joining us here live, but also for all of you listening in now on the podcast, because Rosann Ling is for sure one of the people who has kept Hashtag Impact going here, because she has been a very early listener, a very early supporter. And it's actually, this is mutual, because I'm a huge fan of her work as well that she is doing with Prism Creative, an agency that is helping brands to communicate their purpose in a way that their brand really stands out. And this is such a treat for you, all of you here, because you don't get the chance to really have this conversation with an expert like her every day. And thank you so much for taking the time for being here with us today, Rosann. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Regina. Thank you for the lovely introduction. And honestly, it's my honor to be here today and just to be a guest of yours today after so many years of listening to Hashtag Impact and then seeing the team grow and seeing you grow along with it as well, and seeing how much impact you're actually making on a day-to-day basis is just truly inspiring. I mean, my story began with Hashtag Impact as well, actually, because when I was transitioning from a career in interior design from London and I moved back to Hong Kong in about 2016, 2017, I remember meeting you, Regina, at Celia's event, and then you told me all about this amazing new thing you were doing with Hashtag Impact. And I remember when it went live and I listened to the first episode, I still remember exactly where I was when I was listening to that first episode. I was on the way to the airport, actually. I was on the Airport Express and I was listening to your voice in my ears. And I remember finishing that episode and I was like, wow, I can't wait to listen to the next one, because it was just so amazing. It was so inspiring. And that really got me thinking, what can I do to make an impact as well? And that's really where the story of Prism Creative began as well.
Oh,
so thank you, Regina.
Gosh, I had no idea that it was. Oh my gosh, that it means a lot to me. Thank you for sharing that, Rosann. And I actually pictured you in the Airport Express now. That is actually a beautiful ride over these bridges, and you see all. Oh my goodness! So for all of our listeners outside of Hong Kong, I hope you get to experience that ride one day as well. And so with the work you do with Prism Creative, I want to actually get straight to it. And we're going to get to your amazing podcast that you launched as well, where people can then dive even deeper in some of the topics that we are discussing here today. But one of these episodes that you have created in this like bite-sized, really quick tutorials almost, of how to build a brand that is more impactful. I loved that one where you share about the mistakes, because don't we all do it all wrong? When we are starting out. So actually, I would like for you to to give us that kind of like in what you have seen working with your clients. What do we get wrong when we're starting to building our brands and communicating our purpose?
Well, so to begin with, the work that I do starts with brand strategy, and then we branch off into like building your brand story, your core DNA, your brand's personality, and then how that would inform the brand's identity. In other words, your logo design. So that's the kind of work we do with our clients. And Prism Creative mainly has two avenues. One is specifically serving NGOs and social enterprises. And then the other avenue is serving other like corporate or startup clients. So actually these two sets of clients have very, very similar struggles, I notice. And the first one actually is not having a long-term goal or like a big enough goal to work towards. So I know that a lot of people who might go into business strategy or hire a business consultant, they break down the goals into like quarterly or yearly, but that actually doesn't allow us to stretch our imaginations enough. So the first question that I always ask my clients on or even a call that they before they even become a client is, what is your 10-year vision? Because until we can figure that out and until we can dream that big, it's actually really, really hard to get the motions going, because those goals should be your North Star. They should influence every single branding and business and marketing decision that you make, and even down to the people that you want to hire and the brands that you want to partner with in the future. And so in order to see a brand in order to build a brand for the long term, we really need to start by thinking about 10 years. Where do I hope to be in 10 years time? And then we work backwards from there instead of, okay, this is what I want to achieve in the next quarter and the next quarter and the next quarter. Really want to stretch your imagination there. And then once we're able to stretch that, you'll realize that a lot of decisions you make along the way will be so much easier as well. And then I think the second mistake that I see people make a lot as well is not understanding like what makes you unique. So unfortunately, I see this a lot with social enterprises actually, where we feel that the cause behind it is enough to make people notice us. But actually, so often when we start mapping out like what actually makes them unique, they can't actually answer that. So remember that people always want to either buy out of convenience, or they either want to feel like they resonate with something in your brand story in order to really catch their attention. So really have a think about, okay, if someone has been donating to this charity for X amount of years, what would make them want to donate instead to your charity this year? Like what would make them want to make that switch? What kind of story do you want to weave? And how do you want to resonate with like what they value and what they believe in? And I know that for charities, the idea of selling is really uncomfortable, but really just think about what would make people stop in their tracks and think what you're doing is really important work. I think one thing that charities often struggle with is thinking that people understand the value of what you're doing. So we assume that, okay, for example, a client that we've been working with on the long term, Love 21 Foundation, we would think that, well, of course people would want to support people with Down syndrome, but like why exactly would we want to do that? And a lot of the times we need to actually educate them about the charity itself, like what the charity is doing, especially around sports and nutrition, why there are so many people with Down syndrome who are obese, and why we have to try and tackle the problem from the root. So really ask yourself every time you're sending out a message, like, why does it matter for not just for the charity, but like why does it matter for the person who might be able to donate to the charity as well? Like what's in it for them? Like what kind of difference can they make? Yeah, so let me know if these points make sense so far. I think a common thread is that we often make assumptions about what people already know about us and what we do, but until we actually spell it out, people might not actually know, or there might be some sort of mismatch in understanding.
Absolutely. 100%. I think that's one of the things I'm still trying to figure out, taking hashtag Impact Club as an example, or the podcast. I think I know what it means to the listeners, but until I ask the listeners and run surveys on that, it's always really surprising what comes back, because the way other people see what I bring is actually oftentimes quite different from what I think I bring.
It always is. It always is a very eye-opening experience to actually just put yourself out there and ask these kind of questions. And you're doing a terrific job of that, Regina. I remember the survey that you sent out a while ago, asking questions about what more you would like to see on hashtag Impact. How would you describe the podcast series in your own words? And these are all terrific questions that actually we go through with our clients as well. So recently, this was a process that I went through with an e-commerce brand with a sustainability concept behind it as well. And what came out of the survey was so wildly different to what the founder had in mind, like what people thought about the brand, how people would use the products as well, that actually so often the answer is actually right there in front of us if we just take the courage to take that step and just ask. So often it's funny because when we think about what I mentioned about the 10-year goal just now and working backwards, a lot of times branding actually means working backwards and actually going, like, for example, going to the people and asking them what exactly they want to see, asking them what this means to them, and then working backwards from there, instead of us just sitting here in silo thinking about ideas.
Courage is an important word you just said there, because I think it is really hard to ask those questions. I still dread it, With the podcast, I think it gets a bit easier now because I've built some kind of like super fan base, Thank you, Rosann, for being one of those guys. Yeah.
There's no surprise to that.
But then it feels, I think once you have like this core of like these a handful of people where you are on the right track and they support you in that process, it's a bit easier. But when it comes to like taking the club, for example, here, what we're doing now, meeting for a casual coffee. I'm having my coffee here. Got to take a sip of coffee, otherwise it's not like a coffee break, right? It's very selfish that I take it as a coffee break because I love the coffee, but you can drink whatever beverage you like and just hang out and make it virtual. This was all born out of COVID. Like a lot of things, I think, in the virtual world have started there or got their inspiration from that. And then I'm still, experimenting now, like bringing in these live recordings. Let's not just hang out for coffee, actually come on the podcast with us. Yeah. And Rosann, you're here with us today, but we also have wonderful guests that are joining and listening in patiently here that we invite in to share their voices as well and ask their questions. So actually, I want to do that, right? Open up the floor to you here as well, because I know I can just assume now, because I know the people in the room, that a lot of the things that Rosann already said, especially about the challenges that charities often face, that resonated quite a bit. Lynette did it.
Yeah, definitely. And, I was really excited to see this event pop into my mailbox, because branding is something that's so important to NGOs, but we often lack the resources to think about it properly and to plan for it properly. So when I saw it, I jumped at the opportunity to, listen in and hopefully be able to ask you questions, which I've been presented now. And I do have a lot of questions, but I think the first one that is at the forefront of my mind is that as an NGO, Justice Centre works with refugees in Hong Kong. But one of the problems when it comes to branding is that there often is a misconception, I think, that refugees are foreigners and it's an outside issue. And we've found it difficult to connect with the local community, people who see Hong Kong as, this is the Hong Kong we want. But then migrants are, maybe slightly outside of that. So how could you what branding tips might you have to really connect and draw those dots between, people who have come to Hong Kong and people who are, born and grown in Hong Kong, say?
So how do we reach out to them and bring more awareness to Justice Centre? Is that what you mean?
And connecting what is seen as, say, a foreign issue sometimes with kind of making it more localized, right? What are the ways to really join those dots?
That's a really great question. Can I ask currently what is the most used form of outreach, whether it's through social media, whether that's through email newsletter or campaigns?
So we're very active on social media. And I suppose we need to think through directly who our audience is, because we use our social media to target a whole bunch of people. And it's really, and I don't think we've really kind of planned out exactly, having a strategy for each type of audience that we're looking out for. So you're already answering my question by asking questions. So I think that's something that we need to think through more carefully. But social media, we do have a quarterly email and we do have events where the main idea is to kind of connect more deeply. But but a lot of these things kind of draw in people who are already supporters, and they're not actually reaching people beyond our supporters.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so thank you for letting me know about what the main source of method of outreach is, and that's a really, really great question, and a question that I hear very often from NGOs. And I know that with NGOs, resources are so stretched, but resources are so stretched, and we try to put a lot of pressure on ourselves to want to reach these massive goals and be on every single channel. And, because that's what everyone says, we have to be on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and everything. But first of all, what I would encourage you to do is really think about who you're trying to target. So, for example, for Justice Centre, is it important to first target students? Just as an example. Okay, students, university students. We want to be able to educate them so that since a young age, they're able to already understand that actually the refugee crisis is not a crisis that's outside of Hong Kong. And we shouldn't treat it as out of sight, out of mind. So then, okay, students, where are they already? So think about where could we tap into a big database where our target audience already is? And then think strategically, what kind of partnerships can you start to form? The obvious thing would be to start talking to universities, to start talking to university clubs, but also what can we find already on forums or on Facebook groups, for example, and really hone into where they actually already are so that you can make more impact with less effort. Or another example is we want to be able to target more people who are solo entrepreneurs who might be interested in learning more about Justice Centre and being able to volunteer more. then where would you tap into this big group of volunteers as well? So I'm just giving some examples. I need to look more into Justice Center's work and who exactly you might be targeting to give more specific examples. But what I'm trying to say is you don't have to try and reinvent the wheel. You just have to think about who exactly you're trying to target and then go where they already are. Instead of trying to attract them to you, you go to them.
Right. No, actually, that's very simple advice, but it sounds simple, but it's something that I think is so helpful to actually use as a starting point to thinking how we can improve our branding. So thank you very much. That was really good.
I'm glad it was helpful. I mean, a lot of times, actually, we just have to think very simply, like what is the most impact we can make with the littlest effort? Because especially I know for NGOs, resources are so stretched. I mean, not just for NGOs, but most companies out there, or most entrepreneurs out there, our resources are very stretched.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's definitely so. Yeah. So
and don't feel the pressure to have to be on every single channel as well.
Yeah. No, thank you. That's really good advice.
More impact with less effort. I think that's going to be the quote that you will see on the hashtag impact social media when we're promoting this episode. I love that. And I hear that on your podcast as well, when you were talking about we mentioned the surveys, right? Get to know who these people are and what they need more of, or what they want more of, or how they see you, so that you can target them more in a way so that you speak their language. And that episode really resonated with me as well, where you shared those ways how to run these surveys also without spending a big buck on it. And you can actually do that and run these campaigns. So I just want to flag to a listener that episode on your podcast, Branding for Impact. Let's just drop it right here now, that everyone knows that you can listen to more of these bits and pieces of advice, like Lynette just mentioned. Actually, often it's like these simple things that we forget in the day-to-day of our long to-dos. And often we overcomplicate things, right? I mean, I myself, like, oh my God, I'm raising my hand. You see me now in the video. I'm so guilty of it, to just overcomplicate things all the time. But yeah, we don't have the time actually to overcomplicate it. How is your own experience with that when you're working with your clients, Rosann? How can we get, how can we get more clear in all those messy thoughts we have and all these expectations we have on ourselves, instead of just doing, right? We are overthinking a lot, don't we?
Yeah, we definitely overthink a lot. And I think one of the things that holds us back the most often, well, at least for me, is waiting for things to be perfect to put it out there. Because if we keep waiting, actually what we end up doing is it ends up costing us time. It ends up costing us effort, extra money, and it sets us back from our goals. And I think so often we try to plan. I am really bad at social media. I am so bad that I think Prism's social media has not been updated in the last 6 months. So I am totally guilty of this, waiting for things to be perfect to launch, or waiting for things to be perfect to put out there. And I cannot stress enough how much that voice inside our head is actually the one lying to us and saying, like, you're not good enough to put that out there. You're not going to get a good enough response. But actually what I realize so often is that people are so much more forgiving than we think, and also so much more interested in hearing what we have to say than we think as well.
Juhi, I want to bring you in now. Let everyone hear your beautiful voice, and you will hear more of Juhi coming up in an episode of Hashtag Impact, our wonderful guest host. Yeah.
I was thinking so much about what both Lynette and Rosann said, and I had a question and a comment for each of you. So for Rosann, my first question was, you talked about kind of things that have changed and evolved over COVID. And I was wondering, like, from your perspective, how do you think communication in terms of branding has changed during COVID? Because we've seen so many things like change online just to adapt to current scenarios. And I want to know if you think it's been more effective, less effective, and in like what context have you seen this?
Great question, Julie. Yes, I mean, because of COVID, everyone's spending so much more time online and trying to connect online. So I think now more than ever, your email newsletter is actually your biggest asset. So I know that we always focus on social media. We always focus on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, etc. But actually your email newsletter is where you can get really intimate with your audience and really, whether that's asking them some really important questions or whether that's sharing some behind the scenes or some intimate news with your audience. Actually, your email newsletter has a much higher conversion rate and click-through rate and read-through rate compared to a social media post.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that like just because like from what like I've seen, I know that like I'm a lot more aware of things, like being from a different generation. I think I notice a lot more things that happen on social media, but it's like it's very quick information.
Yes,
it's something
very
that it's
surface
like
level.
Yeah, it's something that it's like, you know, like okay, like you have my attention, but it's like that's it. Like you just have my attention. Like I don't know where else to get other resources. Like I don't know where else to learn more about certain issues. Like for example, I saw a post the other day about nutrition and like healthy eating. So I was like immediately like interested, and they were discussing really cool things. And then I was like really interested. They had my attention, and then there was nothing else there. So it is really surface level, and it's great for, I guess, younger generations because we're targeting people that if you want to give fast information and have their attention really fast, this is a great way of doing it. But newsletters, you're absolutely right. I think they're a great way to be more intimate, actually get more understanding of what's going on around them, be able to share different stories. So I 100% agree with that. And the kind of just like something I was thinking about, Lynette, when you were talking about getting the message out there and trying to connect refugees with locals. Like when I was a kid, I spent a lot of time with a lot of refugees that were around my age. And I like did see a lot of the times that locals had a more negative view towards them. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But something that I noticed that a lot of, if you're talking more specifically about locals and I guess just generally the Hong Kong community, something that I see a lot in advertisements, whether it's related to government, social programs, social media, things like that, it's always about community and family. And I think like when we talk about uniting people together, I think the one thing that we have to focus on is uniting values. Like they may be completely different in terms of religion and social values. For example, like Chinese people may want to eat more chicken and Muslim people want to eat more like beef. I don't know, it could be anything. But there are certain things that unite people that are so underlooked. Like, for example, the one thing I notice a lot in advertisements or television programs relating to Hong Kong is about family and connection. So I feel like if that was something that you put out for locals, like if you wanted to reach out to the local community, I feel like that's a really underrated value because nowadays we all talk about moving forward in the future and development, and these are really great topics to discuss. But I feel like if you're aiming more for the local community, something that like the two keywords that come to mind is like family, community, and also like just unity, you know, just from like an outsider perspective, I wanted to share that because that was the first thing I thought of when you talked about reaching out to the local community.
Thank you. No, that's a really great suggestion, and really thinking about common values is a great way to approach it as well. You know, one thing that we try to do is look at how art breaches the acts as a bridge as well. So we have an annual arts prize where the local community and everyone within Hong Kong, whether you're a migrant, whether you're a refugee, whether you're Hong Kong born and grown, you're invited to submit pieces of art that explores the idea of identity and, dignity and humanity and things like that. So we've been trying to explore that space. And it does kind of lead us to some connections there. But yeah, looking at shared values and looking more broadly is a great way to think about it. So thank you very much for that comment.
And for our listeners that might recognize Lynette's voice, I actually want to send you also to the beautiful episode that we recorded where you can learn more about Justice Center Hong Kong. That was a while back now. Of course, a lot has happened since then, Lynette. But it's a recording I'm also very fond of because I really appreciate the work you do for your beneficiaries, and the way you told your story also resonated a lot with me. So thank you for that, Lynette. I will put that for all our listeners interested in your work with Justice Center. I would put that in the show notes as well. And it is all about storytelling in the end, right? The brand tells a story, and that, I guess, Rosann, what I want to pick up on when you shared your awesome advice to reach out to people through newsletters and start that intimate relationship with them, is also that I think for a lot of people it's so hard to start with that as well, because you are writing that and then you have, who are you supposed to send it to? And it made me think and smile a bit when one of the first things I learned about Impact HK and Love 21 Foundation, Jeff Rothmeyer's organizations, Love 21, that you are also very involved with, Rosann. I read a blog post by him where he shared that his newsletter, or his blog, I think that's how he said it, like the blog that he was running or still runs, the guest room, I think it's called. He had like one reader, that was his mom. And he is also such a good example of how you have to start with that one reader and that one supporter. And now look at what has grown out of it, how he is running these two charities, a lot of supporters, massive. Oh gosh, I don't even know where to start with the things that they have been establishing in Hong Kong to support the community is amazing. But that, how do we get over that we actually do start that, even started conversation on our newsletter, for example, with our first, 10 subscribers, and like, is it worth it? You hear the voice in your head again saying like, yeah, but who is actually reading this, and is this worth the effort? Is it, Rosann?
100% is worth the effort. I also, at the very beginning, worried like, oh, well, who's going to read this and who's going to be interested in this? And am I just wasting my time? But actually, we can get really creative with the newsletters that we send out as well. So Prism Creative has two main newsletters that we send out every month. The first one is actually a very special newsletter called Impactful Inspirations, where we put together a lot of impactful news in sustainability, in NGOs, any marketing tips and any tools that we've found on the web. And we put it all together into a newsletter. So it saves you a lot of time. And it hopefully can inspire you to think up of some new ideas and try some new tools as well. And that actually it's been a very, very successful experiment for us, because it made us realize that although we are a creative agency, we're not here just to serve our clients on a one-on-one basis. We want to be resourceful. We want to be a resource to everyone. We want to be able to help everyone make an impact their own way as well. So that was one way of us to repurpose everything that we're already doing on a day-to-day basis, doing all this research, and gather it all for our community. And then the second newsletter that we send out is it's a private one that I write to our clients every month, so both past and present clients. And it's just an intimate letter to them. It's very similar to the one that you write, Regina, where you send an update, whether that's a live update or a podcast related update to your community. So it doesn't have to be, there are no like hard rules as to what you need to send out in the newsletter. And I would always just say, go with your heart and see what comes out of it, because you never know what will actually come out of it. And both the newsletters, I just thought, why don't I just send it out and see? Both of them started out as experiments. And the first one, Impactful Inspirations, has been going on for a year now. And I constantly still get replies on it saying, oh, I really love this newsletter. Thank you so much for sending it out. And it's just once a month, so it's not that much effort. But it really helps people to understand what we're about, and also keeps us at the top of their, keeps us in their minds as well when they're thinking about branding. So it doesn't have to be all the time about, news about the organization or news about, you can think about how you can be of a resource to everyone else as well. Or you can think about what would be helpful to everyone else, and what would people want to see in our newsletter as well.
Yeah, I love that. You always have really great like tools as well that I find on the inspiration newsletter, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna try that out, because it's already, you already tried it out. So I'm like, oh, now I want to check that out. I really appreciate that as well. And actually, for all our people joining the recording here, I actually wanna send you there to, just a sec, sharing the screen. Gosh, have I not done that for a while? Can you now see my beautiful Zoom screen? I'm like, what's happening? Was it here? Yes. So really a resource that I want to point you to is your website, Rosann. I love that. And you find the podcast right here as well. So if you go to prismcreative.co, you find the bar podcast. And when you scroll down, you find all these wonderful tips you have on. I love the one where you answered people's questions as well. And I think that was a surprise for you too, right? You asked people to send in their questions. Mm-hmm. And then you were like, what? This is what people want to know about. It's always such a surprise as well. Or they are easy, budget-friendly ideas, research your target audience. 7 ways branding is a lot like dating. I love that one as well. I mean, I listen to all of them, of course. Yeah, I can out myself as an absolute binge listener of your podcast. And I'm excited for what's to come as well. And what I would also actually love to point people to is the impact report you did. Can we bring that up? Because there were so many great findings. How I think that can be a big motivation to us purposeful organizations as well, that oftentimes we need to look for funding. We need to look for people supporting our causes. But what you uncovered in this impact report is that people actually care, and that purpose actually does sell, right? People look for brands that do good. Where can we find that report? Can you navigate me to it?
Yes. So if you head on to resources.
Yes, on prismcreative.co resources.
So the impact report is the one in the middle, making a positive impact, what consumers want 2022. So basically what we did at the end of last year was we sent out a survey to our network, and also so much thanks to #Impacts Network as well, asking people what are their thoughts around like branding and sustainability and social impact, because we really wanted to get to know where people are at and where we can meet them. And we uncovered so many interesting things. Like we realized that even in Hong Kong, there's a huge difference in what people are doing in reaction to social or environmental impact, social or environmental issues, depending on which generation they are from. So the boomers are actually doing a lot of things like recycling. They're doing a lot of things like donating to charity, whereas the Gen Zs are doing a lot more activist work, spreading the message online, or actually spending money on products or services that have a social or environmental cause behind it. So it's not that boomers or older generations are not interested in environmental or social issues. That I think that's a very common misconception. And that's also why, if you have a think about it, a lot of wellness brands do not target boomers. I don't know whether that's because it's not sexy or whether they think that they're not interested, but actually they're just probably interested in a different part of the product cycle or service cycle. So if we can actually take this insight and think about our product or our service or our offering as a whole, and really think about, okay, this part of it actually resonates more with just this generation, and then that part of it actually resonates more with that demographic, then it's actually, we can actually make so much more impact with less effort again, right? Because we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to constantly be thinking of, okay, should I send out a new campaign? Should I design a new product just for this demographic again? Actually, no, this answer is just really simple. Just have a think about your entire business or organization and think about which part of it would resonate more with the different demographics.
I see a lot of nodding and excitement around getting the hands on that report from our guests here today. And yeah, for all of you listening now, I'll put that in the show notes as well, where you can download the Impact Insights report. I learned lots from it as well. And these resources are so valuable. Thank you for putting that together, Rosann. I know it was a lot of work.
I just wanted to chime in, Rosann, because I thought that was such a great point about comparing between boomers and Gen Z. Like, I'm part of Gen Z, and something that I notice now more than ever is where I shop or where I get any kind of product. Where does it come from? Who made it? Why should I buy from it? Why is it ethical? I think the first thing that comes up in conversation when I have with any friend or family member, we'll talk about any companies that we like. And the first thing we'll say is, it's not that ethical, or, oh yeah, they do really great stuff. Like, they donate to a lot of places. Like, that's our main primary concern. But if I went, for example, to an older person with that, they would say oh, I just, know how to donate my old clothes, or maybe work with certain charities to do that. So it's a very interesting point, because the way we market that to our generation, we can still do things like that. Even I can say I still recycle, I still like to donate clothes or thrift clothes and do things like that. But it's not as important as being a consumer, because we're highly focused on that. So it's a really interesting point that you make, because I feel like it's something that we all do and we're all just subtly aware of, but I don't think we're all fully conscious of our kind of spending or consuming habits because of where we come from or the people we interact with. It's very interesting insight. So I just want to point that out.
I'm glad to hear that, Julie. Yeah, that was actually a very big aha moment for a lot of people at the briefing event. Another one actually as well was, it turns out that 75% of people would actually be motivated to find out more about a brand or purchase something from a brand or support an organization if they found out from a friend and family member about the brand or organization, versus only 7% if it came from an influencer. So then, it's very, very drastic, right? These two numbers, 75% versus 7%. So again, it's really thinking about your audience first and like where they are, what do they value, and how do you reach them in a way that resonates with them? Yeah. So working backwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that just inspired me. I think I mentioned that in a podcast before, but I think I should highlight it more, maybe in the intro. Maybe I'm going to do it in the intro of this episode. Maybe when you're listening back to this, you will already hear how I implemented this advice now, what I'm doing with it. Because if all of our supporters, could just tell one friend about it, but really like with the link of, I love listening to this podcast, check it out. Or I'm a supporter of Justice Center Hong Kong, please check them out. They do great work. If every one of our supporters could just do that for one person, look, now we have it black and white. The stats say that 75% of those people were at least they're going to check it out, right? I think that's also something that I do in the podcasting course. I remember that the first, like what I say, because I know it's so hard when people start their own podcasts, and congratulations on doing that, Rosann, putting your voice out there as well. It's so hard to make it so public, right? Put it on social media or put it in our newsletter. But why don't we just start with our inner circle, our family members, our best friends? And what if we launch some campaign to them first, right? And say, this is it means a lot to me. I put a lot of work and effort in it. I would love for you to check it out. And actually, could you also forward this to one of your best friends? And then you have a little launch there already for your campaign,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah, that's what I always tell my clients. I always say, think about depth first and then breadth. Because you can spend the same amount of money just engaging with your friends and family, maybe buying them a coffee gift voucher and saying like, hey, if you get someone to, if you successfully get someone to come and listen to my podcast episode, I'll buy you a coffee. Or you probably don't even need to offer that because they would happily do that for you anyway. As opposed to spending a lot of money on a marketing campaign that you don't even know like who it's going to reach or what kind of reaction you're going to get from it as well.
And for everyone listening today, I also want to send them your way, Rosann. You gave us a lot of insights now, but if they still have an open question, I know you're always welcoming people reaching out to you. Again, Branding for Impact, your wonderful podcast already answers a lot of questions as well. But I actually would love for you to get in touch with Rosann directly if you have any depth, a question that goes into depth. So where should they do that?
You can reach me on Instagram at prismcreative.co, or you can email me at rosann@prismcreative.co as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time. We won't let you go. Have you all listened to #Impact Podcast regularly? So the jingle music for our live audience, you will have to imagine now. I will post in the post-production, the music will go over it. I'm not going to sing it now to you, Rosann, but you know it anyway, right? But our 3 quick questions for all our guests before I let you go. Making an impact means?
Trying to do your best no matter what best today looks like.
Who inspires you in the way they are tackling the sustainable development goals? That is our season 5 theme. So if you want to learn more about the SDGs, you can do that in season 5.
Regina Larco.
Aww. I'm going to buy that coffee, I promised you, Rosann. Thank you for saying that.
No, honestly, I think, the way that you curate the episodes and the way that you're bringing so many important topics for us to become aware of is incredible, Regina.
Oh, thank you. And what could everyone do right now to make the world a better place?
What could everyone do right now to make the world a better place? Go say hi to your neighbor.
That's a really nice one.
Yeah. I think with COVID, we often forget sometimes how lonely it can be being at home every day, and we sometimes pass people. I mean, that happens to me as well. Like I pass people in the elevator, I pass people downstairs when I'm taking a walk, but I don't really ever have the courage to say hi, like how your day is going. My partner Chris is very, very good at doing that, and yeah, I'm slowly learning from him as well to just have the courage to say hi to a neighbor or say hi to a stranger.
Lynette, do you remember what your answer was to that question? And we're getting an applause from Lynette as we're speaking. We have to go back also to your episode to re-listen to. I'm sure you said something beautiful as well. Oh.
No, I really liked, all your answers, Rosann, but especially last one. That is definitely something that I think as a community we can all do more of, and just knowing, getting to know the people who exist around you is something that I think the last few years have shown is so important. Applause to that.
It's crazy, right? I mean, with the last 2 years, we've spent so much time at home, and sometimes we don't even know the person who is living on the other side of the wall.
Yeah, I'm nodding. So let's all do just that. And again, thank you so much for coming on to this live recording, Rosann. I know that's next level, just doing it in private is one thing, but now just, you don't know what to expect. And again, thank you so much also for Chewy and Lynette and Chris for being here today, listening in to our conversation. It means a lot. So we'll do that more often. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. Oh, you are amazing. Thank you for hanging out with us for that long. And I'm sure you learned a lot from Rosann and from the guests we had on and the people in the audience. It's always so lovely to do these live recordings. And of course, we'll be doing that again. You can join us for one of these recordings at #impact.com/club, where you get invites to join us, to get your voice heard, and so much more. Please also remember to share this podcast with a friend of yours. Thank you for making an impact, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.